Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today we're continuing our series on the things you can do to improve your thyroid physiology, and today we're on part 9. We're talking about metabolic fitness. We've talked about dietary fitness, sleep fitness, respiratory fitness, emotional fitness, physical fitness, habitual fitness, environmental fitness, and today we're talking about metabolic fitness. So what is your metabolism? First of all, that's all the chemical processes that occur in the body. So we need to make sure that all those systems work well and that they all integrate well. And unfortunately, many times people are kind of grow up in this model that these systems are all separate, right? We go to one doctor who specializes in GI physiology. We go to a different doctor who specializes in something else, almost like these systems are separated, but they're not. They all work together. They all integrate together. So when we're thinking about how do we improve somebody's thyroid physiology or how do we improve somebody's overall health, we got to start taking a look at the underlying systems and say which systems are really struggling to function well. And we talked about this before, that under homeostatic regulation, all the systems get the amount of support they need. They should all be running well. But what happens in an excessive stress state, we shift into allostatic regulation. We kind of down-regulate the amount of energy that go to certain systems. And initially, that's an adaptive response. But if we don't support that tissue appropriately for an extended period of time, or that system for an extended period of time, that system can start to break down, become dysfunctional, and then eventually wind up developing disease. And so that's one of the things that we need to evaluate is like, where are these systems? Which systems are struggling and which systems need some support, okay? So how do we go about doing this? I guess probably the first thing to start was with the definition, like what is metabolic fitness? And that is the degree to which your metabolism supports your ability to adapt, self-manage, survive, and thrive, regardless of your environment, right? So if your metabolism works really well, you go out in a really cold environment, you can figure out how to generate some heat, at least in the short run, right, to keep you warm and to keep you active and to get you potentially out of that environment into a better environment. So we talked about the definition, we talked about what metabolism is. How do we assess our metabolic fitness? Well, this is one of those situations where you can kind of start in this process, but this is where you really need to get some help, because the metabolism is a very complex process. The moment you think you've got it figured out, you find out that maybe you don't. So this is where I think all the other things, you could really do a lot of that stuff on your own. But now, because of the complexity of metabolism, I think this is where you're really going to have to find some help, because we need to really do a good job of assessing these systems, but we also need to understand how these systems all tie together and the best way to go about trying to support them or address them. So how do we evaluate them? We can look at signs and symptoms. Obviously, the signs and symptoms you have, your health history, your health timeline, but often you'll see a physician using something called a metabolic assessment questionnaire. There's lots of different versions of it. For probably the last 20 years, I've used the version that Datis Karazian had produced, and I learned in Apex seminars a long time ago, but he did a fantastic job of organizing signs and symptoms into system categories to kind of give a physician a good idea to understand which systems might be compromised. We can definitely look at blood chemistry panels. So a good comprehensive blood chemistry panel, and what that means to different people is different. My comprehensive blood chemistry panel is about 65 tests in a urinalysis. Somebody else, especially an allopathic physician, if you ask them if they ran a comprehensive metabolic panel, they might say yes, and that may only be 14 tests. So everybody's got a different interpretation of what that means. But to me, we can definitely use blood chemistry panels to take a look at what's going on with multiple systems in the body. And then we can also use different types of tests. And in functional medicine, we're going to look at functional-based tests. In allopathic medicine, they're probably going to use more pathology-based testing. But in functional medicine, we're going to look at some things. We may look at a stool test, especially if we want to see what's going on in the GI tract. We can look at urine testing. We can look at saliva testing. We can look at hair testing, right? There's all different mediums that we could use to assess what's going on with human physiology. Some of these are a little bit more verified, more legit, some of these tests, and some are a little bit questionable. But there are lots of functional tests. We get to the stool test, we start looking at, there's so many stool tests out there today. Some have really no value, but they cost a lot of money and they look sexy and people spend money on them. And there's some that I think have quite a bit of value. But getting the value out of these tests requires more than just reading the report. It requires the ability to interpret the report and what that means in context of your signs, your symptoms, your diagnosis, your supplements, and the other systems and the other tests that you've run. So let's say you do a stool sample, you can take that stool test, let's say you do a vibrant stool test, and then you look at your blood work, you can see if you have a knowledgeable practitioner, they're going to look at that test and be able to put those pieces together and kind of look at that stool test and confirm some of the things that they see on there because they can see similar indicators on the blood work. Same with hormone panels as well. So functional testing, lots of functional tests, labs that are out there. But I don't think you should just go out and buy these things. They're expensive. And if you don't know how to assess these appropriately, you're going to be wasting a ton of money. I really try and get people to not spend a lot of money on tests if they don't know how to interpret them properly. Let somebody like me who's a functional medicine practitioner assess what's going on, look at their health history, look at their health timeline, and then make a determination how best to evaluate the physiology. And that way we can kind of reduce the amount of money we're spending on tests. Tests are fantastic, I love them, but they are expensive. So we want to run as few tests as possible and get the max amount of information. Some of the systems we need to take a look at when we're assessing somebody's overall health and we want to improve thyroid physiology, we need to take a look at their blood sugar regulation. We need to take a look at their ability to generate energy. So we talk about mitochondrial function there. We want to take a look at their digestive system from the top, from the oral cavity to stomach and stomach acid production to bile and gallbladder function, the pancreas, small bowel, large bowel. We got to take a look at the whole thing. We want to take a look at the detoxification pathways. So we're talking about liver, we're talking about gallbladder, we're talking about lymph, we're talking about skin, all those areas that support the detoxification. We want to look at the adrenal and the renal system. We want to look at the immune system and the inflammatory system. We want to look at iron regulation, really big factor there. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding regarding an iron panel and what the values mean. And, should you have a ferritin level in the 90s? I don't think so. I'm not sure why we keep telling people that, but I think that was one of those stories that was told that you have to have a ferritin level of 90 to have optimal thyroid function. I don't know where that came from. I don't think it's accurate. And I think it's probably some bad information we're giving people. Thyroid physiology, obviously, we need to take a look at sex hormones, neurotransmitters, and a whole host of other hormones potentially to assess what's going on with somebody and help them heal and recover. So this is one of those situations where I think you need help. It's really complex. Don't go at this alone. Don't order a bunch of testing if you don't know how to interpret them. And this is where it's worth the investment. Now at this point, hire your functional medicine practitioner to help you through the process. All of this other stuff, you could have done most of this stuff on your own. At this point, when you're getting to the point where you got to determine what's going on with the systems, how to support them appropriately, which supplements make the most sense, for how long, what's the dose. These are the things that a functional medicine practitioner is trained to do. And they're also the person who can tell you, hey, I know they're talking about that test, but that's not beneficial for you. Don't waste your money on that test. Let's do this test. All right. So hopefully this one helps. This was Metabolic Fitness, number 9 in the series, how to improve your thyroid physiology. And realistically, this is how to improve your health and well-being. All right. Any questions, put them below where you ever watch the video. And don't forget, if you haven't done so yet, go out and grab your copy of the Thyroid Debacle. If you already have your copy of the Thyroid Debacle and you've read it, go to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and give us a review. Appreciate it. Thank you.